And welcome inside the Sports Guys Podcast.com, a grand slam of music and sports out there, too. And of course, it wouldn't be the same if we weren't talking high school football for 2024. And to do that, of course, the new magazine is out there across all the digital streaming platforms. The 2024 Dave Campbell Texas High School Football Magazine. The covers are awesome. Of course, P&G coach Jeff Joseph and his dad, Gary Joseph, on the cover. And the reborn rivalry, Texas A&M and Texas, as Texas heads over to the dark side, I guess you could say, the Southeastern Conference there, too, to renew that rivalry once was. And to talk all about it here, Southeast Texas football, Greg Tepper, the managing editor of Texas Football Magazine. Greg, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. We are it's 2 weeks from tomorrow that football kicks off across the state of Texas. So that is both exciting and, for me personally, a little terrifying because that's a lot of work to do. But it's the fun time of year, most certainly.
We'll talk about the book. I've gotten a chance to get my copy there last week. And, man, this is digital subscriptions online there, too. Excited about that, texasfootball.com. And the cool thing is over 1,500 high schools. If people don't know this, from Oklahoma to Texas to Louisiana to bordering states out there, too. This is the Bible of high school football.
You know, I appreciate you saying that, and it is a labor of love for sure. You know, this is a product that all of us here at Dave Campbell's Texas Football take very seriously. Look, it's a magazine, and I recognize that's the year 2024. So, certainly they are not as booming as they were in the past. But what's amazing about this magazine is the resonance that it has with people. That this is something that, you are not alone. You wait to go pick up your copy of this magazine. For a lot of people, it's the only magazine they buy all year long, and that's awesome for us. But it's also it's a charge to keep. It's something we've got to make sure we do right. And so, we want to cover football as comprehensively as we can. All 1,500 high school football teams, all 48 college football teams, recruiting, it's 400 pages, crammed full of information. And sometimes it's amazing. Sometimes 400 doesn't feel like enough for as much as the stuff we've put into that magazine. Sometimes I kind of wish we had, 410, 412, something like that. But in the end, it is one of those things that you can sit back and be proud of because it is I know it has such resonance and such a special place in people's hearts across the state of Texas. And more importantly, such a resource for a lot of people that rely on this type of stuff. So we're just thrilled to do it and continue Dave's legacy.
No doubt to continue that legacy too. Got to start, with you right here, of course, coming down 8-5A here in Southeast Texas, and of course the kingpin out there. The target's now on their back when it comes to the Port Neches Groves Indians, and like I said, let's scalp them. We always love that. But it was so exciting to see the last 2 years what Jeff Joseph has come in and what he's been able to input the culture in Southeast Texas here, Greg, and really take this team to just the things that haven't been since the 1970s, and really bind the culture, get the kids in a weight room workout, and of course a great off-season program, summer workouts, and to stand at the top of the mountain last year. You guys were we were at AT&T Stadium when they played South Oak Cliff, one of the best high school football games I'd ever seen. Went down to the wire. Talk about P&G and just stacking up and how you guys are picking them with the target on their back now to repeat as champions.
Yeah, P&G is one of those teams that you're exactly right. You do it once. Anybody can make it to not anybody, but making it to a state championship game is hard. Making it to 2 consecutive state championship games is really hard. And that's what they've been able to do there. And of course, winning last year's title game was a huge feather in their cap, so to speak. And this is a program that has been really reborn in the image of what Jeff Joseph wants it to be. They play hard-nosed physical defense. They run out of the shotgun, but they run it with tight ends. So that they're going to run the ball, and they are big and physical. That's what they do. And you take a look at what they lose. Obviously losing a guy like Shea Adams is tough. He was a star. Absolutely. And UTSA is going to be thrilled to have him. They're going to have a lot of fun with Shea Adams. But I look at some of the other players that they've got coming back, most specifically in the trenches with Jackson Christian on the offensive line, Jonathan Hernandez on the defensive line. And then I also think that their offensive weaponry is going to be just fine. They're losing some of their running game, but I think you're going to see more from the quarterback Connor Bailey, who I really thought grew into the role last year. London Nunley, I think, is due for a real breakout year as a senior. Look, we have P&G number 1 in the state. That's a target on their chest, but they've earned it. I mean, sorry to say, I get people telling me, "Hey, why'd you rank us so high?" You can fix that. Just quit winning so dang much. But P&G has certainly earned that, and I think that they're deserving to be the number 1 team in the state. They will have to go through the usual suspects, including now swinging over to Region 2. They'll have to deal with South Oak Cliff within their own region, but those are questions for down the road. For now, P&G looks like the team to beat in 5A Division 2.
No doubt about it, too. Let's swing on over to a little bit to Hampshire for net. I'll be calling the games coming up there at Longhorn Stadium, too. Another great football team. They got a chance to go a few rounds of the playoffs last year. Of course, I know always the tough matchup is Cuero, too, when it's out there. But this is going to be a very talented Hampshire for net Longhorn football team there, too. And this is going to be a fun, exciting district in 9-4A with West Orange and, of course, Silsbee and all those great teams that are in that district. Greg, they just make it fun.
Yeah, look, the UIL didn't do them any favors. They could have moved Jasper or Silsbee or West Orange Stark out of their district, but they didn't. But I think when you take a look at what the Longhorns have coming back, they got to feel like they can toe up with anybody, especially offensively. Ty Bryson is a name that if you don't know, you need to know. You need to familiarize yourself really quickly. The quarterback was maybe like the quietest 3,000-yard passer in the state last year. He was really, really good. Chris Augustine, I think, is really dynamic playmaker. They've got Braxton Starnes on the outside. This team is loaded offensively. The question for Mark Wagner's ball club is going to be defense. This is the team that is got to do some reloading defense. I think they bring back 3 starters on the defensive side, and that's going to be a challenge for them. But at the same time, Mark Wagner is a defensive guy. He's a guy who came up through the defensive ranks. I think he might still call the plays defensively, and so there's going to be a lot of focus within the program as far as reloading that defense. Now, that said, their district is going to be tough. Jasper is a team that we're very high on. I love Kendrick Crumity and what he's built, that hard-nosed offense, or that hard-nosed kind of style, that classic Jasper style of football. Silsbee is an interesting squad because they get hit really hard by graduation, especially Draylon Miller, but their pedigree should carry them through in a lot of their stuff. And then I also think West Orange Stark could be due for a breakout year, coming back off of, I think, a disappointing 5-6 year. I think they feel like they're going to be right back in the mix. And by the way, I think there's going to be a tendency to look at the 2 teams moving up from 3A and say, oh, well, they're going to be out of the mix. I think Shepherd and Tarkington are dangerous. And I think they're the kind of team that can ruin your season if you let them. So I think right now, I don't have it in front of me. I think we have them out of the playoffs, but those are 2 pretty darn good teams. They're going to be good teams left out of the playoffs in this district. It's that deep. And then you get out of the region, and in region 3 rather, Belleville looms. They're the number 2 team in the state, according to us, or number 3 team in the state. Then you go down to the Central Texas powers like Waco, La Vega, and China Spring that are moving down from 4AD1. I mean, Region 3 is loaded, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. There's going to be some first and second round playoff games that are going to be absolutely spectacular.
Reaching that top of the mountain is always fun out there. The pinnacle of it, AT&T Stadium, of course, home of the Cowboys out there last year. And we had some of the best state championship games. Talked the show about, started talking about P&G and the run that they made the last 2 years, making the state final game and finally winning the state championship and beating South Oak Cliff, getting that monkey off their back. But Alito and some of these other great teams that have come through there over the last few years that have just constantly just built programs from the ground up and not only just had success, Greg, kind of getting there, but once it's kind of what you do to get there. And then when you get to the top of the mountain, how you sustain success when you're at the top of the mountain to build a championship program. Talk about some of those state title games and really specifically the dynasty Alito is building right now.
Yeah, it does seem like we are in the era of a couple of really just a handful of dominant teams that have really established themselves as perennial powers. You mentioned Alito. This is a team that I think it's 10 titles in the last 15 years. It's something absurd what they've been able to do there, and the consistency has been excellent, and it's because of the program that they build from the ground up, right? It's because it's not exciting for me to sit here in the Dave Campbell studio and talk about like the JV and middle school programs, but those are the things that make the difference and that build them up from and keep that sustained, because these guys, these kids grow up wanting to be Bearcats, and then you see and then when you get there, the expectation has been set that, okay, you've got to go out there and perform. You've got to go out there. The standard is state championship. And so you don't want to be the team that lets that standard down. You're seeing that a few other places. Gunner at 3A Division II has established themselves as a perennial power, a team that you can pretty much pencil in to at least a state semifinal every single year. Galena Park North Shore and Duncanville, both of which have played now in 5 of the last 6A Division I state championships games. And I think that you could be on the precipice of that with a couple of other programs. Teams like PNG, like we've talked about, teams like DeSoto, which is coming off back-to-back 6A Division II state championships. Franklin is a program down there in the Central Texas area and 3 or kind of that Brazos Valley area. 3A Division One. They've been in 4 straight state championship games. They've been in every title game since 2020, and they've lost 2 title games. They're 2-2 in those title games. They've lost those 2 title games by combined 8 points. So those are the standard there. And for me, what that speaks to is culture, and what that speaks to is an ability to build a program from the ground up, where you guys are, and where they're installing offenses and defensive schemes at a young age, so that when you do get to the varsity level, it's just second nature for you.
Let's talk about that too. Well said there too. When, the program start at the middle school level and just segue up into the high school level, because those kids from a young age definitely want to be the different the mascot there too. And of course, just big time high school football players having brothers and of course uncles and aunts and things that go through there too, to play sports for those specific schools out there too. So it's a dream come true to watch it for the kids. That's what it's all about here for 2024 Texas high school football. Let's go down to 12 3A, and a couple of teams I got my eye on this year too. Of course, always the Newton Eagles for 12 3A, and Woodville. Woodville's going to be surprising this year. I like their chances.
I do too. We'll start with Newton. They're the team I think to beat in District 12, and the team we have, it's the number 2 team in the state, or number 3 team in the state. They are a fascinating ball club simply because they've got the play. They're always going to have the playmakers and the speed. That is one thing that you never worry about with Newton, is that they have playmakers all over the field. And this year, it's going to be guys like this sophomore Kendra Porter Jr., who are so good as a freshman last year. Braylon Patterson, also excellent as a freshman. They can move him all around on the field. But what I'm interested in with this particular Newton team is a lot of the worker bees, a lot of the guys that whose names are not going to get called by the PA guy on Friday night. Look like they're going to be stars, right? Hunter Williams on the offensive line, I think, is going to be really, really good. Dylan Walker on the defensive line has an opportunity to be good. There's also an argument to be made that this team is still a year away. They're still going to be pretty young, but I think that if they can kind of accelerate that learning curve, I think they've got an opportunity to really make some noise. And then I'm glad you mentioned Woodville. Woodville's a team that I think, because of the district that they're in, they might get lost a little bit because it might be the Newton district, right? But Ty Robinson's done an unbelievable job there, and they have got a running back in Zion Williams, who is really fun to watch. Go put on his tape. It's Zayon. Go put on his tape. He is like the only way I can describe it is that he just runs like angry. He runs like violent, and it's fun to watch. He will lower the shoulder on you. And I think Woodville has an opportunity to really surprise some people, and I think their defense has an opportunity to be really good as well. Keep an eye on Woodville. Those 2 teams, I think, are probably the class of the district. And I think that this is not a thing where dropping down from 3A Division 1, I think, is really going to help them. Remember, this was an 8-win team. The team that won a playoff game in 3A Division 1 last year, now dropping down. I would also say Anderson Shiro is a team to keep an eye on as well. 9 starters back on offense. I think Anderson Shiro is probably that sleeper in that district. But it's a fun district, I think, with plenty of playmakers. So it's going to be, no matter what, you go to a game, there's going to be some fireworks on that Friday night.
We talked PMG and 8-5A, but you're definitely curious now to say 9-5A too. This is going to be very interesting too when you look at a couple of teams around here too that have done some really good things over the past couple of years. Well, I guess one, trying to rebuild that program that once was when Coach Eric Peavy was there, the Westbrook Bruins in 9-5A, and the Port Arthur Memorial Titans continuing to find ways to win, even dropping down from 6A now to the 9-5A district.
Yeah, this is a hard district to call, because I think that there's one of these teams, it feels like they're going to have a breakout, and I'm just not sure which one it is, because I think you could sell me on a lot of them. One of them is Port Arthur Memorial. They end up being the pick we have in the magazine, and I think that they're kind of the chalky pick because of what they've got back. 7 stars back defensively. Tyon King, their star linebacker, I think is going to be the name to know there. But they also lose Davion Isles, who was so good for them. So I'm interested to see how well they rebuild. Lufkin's a team that we've thought for a while is on a precipice of a comeback. Is this the year for them? They bring back 8 starters on the defensive line, but I think they have to replace 4 starters on the offensive line. That has me a little bit scared. Barbers Hill is a team that every year it feels like Barbers Hill could have that breakout year. And I'm interested to see if this is that year for them. But I believe they've got to, they've got to find some quarterback help. That's the big question for them. And then I would throw in there, by the way, the team with probably the single best player in this district, which is Galveston Ball. Galveston Ball's got Jonah Williams, the blue chip 4 or 5 star, I don't know, recruit at the safety position. He's outrageous and the single best player in this district. So it is a fascinating district. And by the way, that's not to count if one of those Beaumont schools figures it out. I think Sterling could be on the or Baytown Sterling could be on the verge of making that leap. I think Beaumont Westbrook is going to be improved. I don't know how well they get out of the cellar there at 0-10, but I think they're going to be improved. It's a fascinating district, and it's probably one of the most difficult districts to project, just because you could really talk me into any of these teams winning the district, and you could also talk me into any of these teams missing the playoffs. There's a lot of variance there.
Let's go down to 10-4A, of course, and this is going to be always fun, too, because 4 teams make the playoffs in these districts we're talking about here, too, and a couple of them I got my eye on, too, of course, changing the guard there with the Lumberton Raiders. Of course, LC always competitive. We're going to see them the first game of the season there at Longhorn Stadium against Little Cypress in non-district play, and, of course, Viter, always with that slot team, misdirection, ball fakes, things like that, and Dwayne Dubois, his second year now, taking over for the great Jeff Matthews there in the program, too, but some really good guys coming back, and Viter could be another kind of spark plug in this district, too. What do you like about 10-4A?
Yeah, what I love about this district is that these teams know each other pretty well, and I think that it's going to make for some really fun games when district play rolls around. Little Cypress Mauriceville gets the nod for us for now. I think you mentioned kind of the program that they've built there. I think that this is a Little Cypress Mauriceville program that's on the road, on the rise. One of the things I do want to keep an eye on, though, is that they lose their offensive coordinator. Jeff Bro took the job at Orangefield. How well do they replace a guy like that? He was so integral to their success. I'm sure they'll be fine, but that's one thing to keep an eye on. You mentioned Lumberton, and speaking of coaching moves, that's a big loss for Lumberton to lose James Reyes. I'm a James Reyes guy. I think James Reyes is a spectacular high school football coach. And I think Palestine really got themselves a steal by going down there to Lumberton. I think, let's put it this way. I think Lumberton fans, when that came out, said, we're like, dang it. There's sometimes in Texas high school football where the coach gets another job and you're like, oh no, I guess that's terrible. This is one where I think Lumberton's probably wish they had him, but I know that they're really excited about Chase McDonald. The defensive coordinator, he's done really good things. Have been a big part of that rise. How well do they take to his message? You mentioned Viter. This is a team that went 3-2 last year in district play. I think that because of what they're going to have as far as experience is concerned, they've got an opportunity, but I want to see what kind of depth they have, especially when we get deep into district play. That's one of the things to remember. This is an 8-team district. So you're going to start district play early here. And you're going to need to, it's a long district grind. How well can they stay healthy? That's one of the things to keep an eye on. And then if I can give you a sleeper, look, I know they were 1-9 last year. I can read, guys. I'm aware, but I think Huffman Hargrave is going to be a lot better. They bring back a ton. They were super duper young last year. I think they really took their lumps, but I think that they are on the come up. Quarterback Nolan Cook, I think, is ready for that next step. He was the offensive newcomer of the year in the district last year. Keep an eye on Huffman Hargrave. I think if there's a party crasher in that district, I think it's them.
Yeah, no doubt. Huffman Hargrave, got to see the last couple of years they're broadcasting Viter games. At the same time, you're right. Nolan Cook is ready for that prime stage. I really feel like I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. Let's go to 10-3A2. Always a fun one here, too, because unpredictability is the key word for this one here, because you got Buna, you got Anahuac, you got Kirbyville, and a whole host of other teams there that can make some noise here, Greg, in 10-3A.
Yeah, this district is – well, let's put it this way. This district was nuts last year, and I have every reason to believe that it's going to be nuts again. Remember, this is a district where it felt like once they got into district play, every week there was an upset. Every week there was a team, like every time it looked like it was going to settle in and we knew exactly what it was going to look like, there would be some crazy upset that threw the district standings out of whack. We like Anahuac to start the year in this district. A lot of that has to do with what they bring back on the offensive side. This is an offense I think really grew as the season went along. And I know that Coach Greg Neese is really fired up about what they've got out there. Brady Barrier is a real started for Rusk back in 2023. He's back at Anahuac. I think that's a real lift for them. East Chambers is really interesting too, because their defense, I think, could hold them in. But in the trenches is where I have some questions. Orangefield with a coaching change, how quickly do they take to Coach Bro? That's going to be really interesting. And then I would look at a team like Cold Spring Oakhurst. Cold Spring Oakhurst was on the outside looking in on the defensive side or on the playoffs last year. They are the newcomer to this district, kind of swinging over from District 9. I think they could maybe steal a playoff game, a spot from a team like Kirbyville, from a team like Buna, because I do think that their offense, especially in the offensive line, looks like it's going to be pretty strong. So that district, I feel pretty good. I don't feel pretty good about anything, honestly. But in this district, I feel pretty good saying Anawak's getting in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Past that, man, like draw some numbers out of one of those bingo things, because it's gonna be really tight. It was crazy last year. There's reason to believe it'll be crazy this year. I'm excited to see this district, because it's a district of chaos that I think has an opportunity to again prove to be one of the least predictable districts in the state.
Let's talk head coaching changes. Always when change happens for a program, you mentioned there with Chase McDonald, of course, James Reyes. I'm a huge James Reyes guy. Palestine got a steal there too when it came down to it. But in your mind, you guys put this out every year and do 1,500 high schools, 48 colleges, and things like that. But is there a top 2 or 3, Greg, that could be the biggest offseason change from a head coach, from a high school team standpoint, that's going to impact maybe a team that struggled last year, but just by getting that head coach into this program?
Yeah, I think there's a couple. One of them is in Central Texas, Joe Gillespie got hired at Hewitt Midway. And if that name sounds familiar, that is because Joe Gillespie was the guy who was the defensive coordinator for TCU in the college football playoff national championship game 2 years ago. Now, he's got Texas high school roots and stuff. He's returning to high school football to coach at Hewitt Midway. This is a team that's really been looking for a spark. Remember, Midway played for a title 2017. They lost to Cy Fair 2016, 2017, around then. So they're no stranger to the big stage. They've just kind of fallen on hard times recently. And I think that getting a guy like Joe Gillespie in could really kind of shake things up. Look, the other kind of headline coaching changes across the state of Texas, there's going to be a lot of people who are talking a lot about Todd Dodge coming back at Lucas Lovejoy, and for good reason. I mean, this is one of the greatest high school football coaches of all time, not just in Texas, but I think anywhere. He's coming out of retirement to take over at Lovejoy. Lovejoy's already got playmakers. I'm excited to see how well they kind of fit in and how much they kind of make that leap. There's a few others that I think are really going to kind of fit that mold. East Bernard went out and was looking for a head coach. They went and snagged Jeremy Jenkins from Harmony. Jeremy Jenkins was one of the very best turnaround artists there at Harmony. Did an unbelievable job. Got them to a quarterfinal or maybe state semifinal a couple of years ago. They have been on the come up. They go and nab him. The question there is going to be a similar question to a team like at Wall. Wall is Houston Guy, retired after forever. He retires. Craig Slaughter, their defense coordinator, takes over. The question there for both of them is that both those teams run, let's call them old school offenses. I believe East Bernard runs the slot T and Wall runs the wing T. Jeremy Jenkins runs the spread, right? That is going to be something how well do they put that in? And speaking of which, at Corpus Christi Calallen for the first time in like 45 years, the job was open because Phil Danher retired, that they promoted from within, longtime assistant. He retired in the offseason, and now they go in to grab Charlie Reeve out of Victoria East. They've been running the wing T forever. Charlie Reeve's a spread guy. This is a program that first play of like every season for the last 4 decades has been like buck sweep. And this year they might line up in a 5 wide empty set. And I wonder if there's just going to be like conniption fits going on in the stands just because they're so used to that. So those are things that I want to see how well those new coaches kind of take to their surroundings. The other one that I would keep an eye on is at Refugio. Refugio, Coach Jason Herring is a legendary 4-time state champion head coach, done unbelievable things at Refugio. He retires in the offseason, and Drew Cox, their defense coordinator, takes over. Drew Cox is no stranger to that program, and he's got the full-throated endorsement from Coach Herring, but it's still a new voice in the room, and it's hard to be the guy after the guy. And I'm interested to see how Refugio handles that with a new voice in the room.
Kind of talk another one here too, which is not a surprise when it looks back at it too, but you look back at all the great players they've had in previous years, but now trying to build this program, let's go back to 10-4A too, and one of the ones I'm keeping my eye on too, Josh Smalley going to Bridge City, and the Bridge City Cardinals trying to resurrect that program and get it back to a football type school, because great baseball program, basketball programs had success over the last couple of years, of course, lost Randall Robertson, but at the same time though, the Bridge City Cardinals getting Josh Smalley, how good of a steal could that be?
Yeah, I love this hire. This is, again, one of those hires that this is one of those hires that I think is not going to be one of those splashy name hires. Todd Dodge to Lovejoy is a splashy name hire, right? Josh Smalley to Bridge City is one of those where you go, oh, okay, fine. But all the Texas high school football like dorks like me are going, yes, absolutely, 100%. That's the kind of thing. It's a real heat check on how locked in you are, because I think what Josh Smalley has done recently has been really, really impressive. This is a guy who's, I believe, got a career record around 500. Like, I think it's like 70 and 60 around then. But like, considering the programs that he's been in, like in their historical like place in the Texas high school football world, to be at or around 500 is amazing and is a true testament to what he's been able to do. I think the turnaround there at Bridge City could be pretty quick. They were 3-7 last year, but they were in a lot of games, and they bring back a lot. Hutch Bearden, their quarterback, is back. They got a running back in Merrick Harris, who I think could be in for a bigger year. I think the turnaround there at Bridge City could be quicker than people think. And they become one of those teams that, again, in that big mix of, again, we think Little Cypress Mauriceville is the best team because they've got 17 starters back. But I look at Bridge City, I think they were better. I'll say this: they were better than their record was last year. If Coach Smalley can install his schemes and install that culture quickly, a playoff berth is absolutely not outside the realm of possibility there. I'm really excited to see what happens.
Let's go down to some 2A football here too. Holday Zeta and, of course, the Evadale Rebels. We look back, and Mark Williams, great program there he had for years. But I remember back in the day, probably at least 10, 15 years ago, and it looks like it maybe turned the corner now, the Holday Zeta Bobcats. Every time we turn on the local high school football shows on a Friday night to get the scores, Holday Zeta was in it. Can they make some noise in 12-2A this year? Yeah,
Holday Zeta, they've been cooking with Crisco for a long time. Yep. And I'll tell you, if you're the kind of guy who looks at a team and just looks at their resume and judges based on their resume, a lot to like about Holday Zeta. Like, a lot to like about this Bobcats team. 18 starters back from a team last year that made the playoffs, that got that playoff experience, that got that extra week of practice. I think that's really, really important. And the guys that they've got coming back, I think, have an opportunity to be excellent. Crispin Soul is probably the name to know there. I'm really excited to see if they can take that next step. District, or rather realignment, didn't do them any favors with West Sabine dropping down into their district, which I think they immediately become the favorite. But remember, the team that won that district last year was Deweyville. Deweyville was maybe a surprise 10-win team from a year ago. It had been a hot minute since they'd won 10 wins, had 10 games. I think they may take a measured step back with just 10 starters back from last year's ball club. Evadale, I think, will be in that mix. The issue for them, or rather the issue for this district, is where's kind of the top end cutoff. What I mean by that is we think West Sabine's going to be pretty good. Deweyville, as a 10-win team, probably deserves our respect. Is that where the cutoff is? And then the next two teams, or the next 5 teams, are all fighting for a playoff spot? Or can you lump Evadale or Holday Zeta into that kind of upper crust and say, no, they're a playoff team and you're fighting for one playoff spot? Because look, like the teams at the bottom, teams like Colmsneal, teams like Sabine Pass, teams like West Hardin, the records are not going to impress you, but they were really young last year and they have a ton coming back from last year's ball club. And so what I'm saying is that for a team like Holday Zeta, make sure you go out there and take care of your business against those teams. Don't let a team like Colmsneal hang around and then they're one upset away from stealing your playoff spot. That is, for me, the biggest thing in this district, is where is that kind of upper crust cutoff, and who kind of joins, in my opinion, West Sabine and Deweyville kind of in that upper crust.
All right, I'll put you on the spot here to do a couple of more, maybe one or two teams out there. We mentioned the head coaching impact of hires coming out there, Todd Dodge, and some other ones out there, too, as well. But looking at the path of last year with some of the same teams getting in the state championship game, but is there maybe 2 or 3 teams that you could say, you know what, this might be their year to get on one heck of a run, not just in district play, but also all the way to the state championship game?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of teams that we haven't seen. You mentioned there's been a lot of samey same, right? A lot of teams that have been made the state championship, frequently for a while. But there's a couple of teams that I'm really interested in that I think could kind of crash that party this year. One of them I am very interested to see if we can get a team from San Antonio into a state championship game. Specifically, I think the best bet might be in 5A Division II with San Antonio Alamo Heights. This team has, I think, perhaps one of the very most dynamic playmakers in the state of Texas in Michael Terry III. He is unbelievable. If you've never seen him, he's a Sunday guy. And he is really, really impressive. I think they're a team that is the favorite on that right side of the bracket. Can they get San Antonio back into a title game for the first time in quite some time? That would be a real feat. That's a team that I'm keeping an eye on. There are some other teams that I think could play kind of party crasher. Actually, I'll say this. The number one team in 2A Division I might, I think, kind of surprise some people. We have Ganado, number one in 2A Division I. Ganado's no stranger to playing deep in the playoffs. They've made it to a state semifinal last year and actually upset Refugio en route to that title game or that semifinal berth. But this is a Ganado team that was very young. Coach Josh Irvin has got this program moving in the right direction. They've played for titles before, but this could be the year they really break through. That's a team kind of that's a little off the beaten path that I think could make a deep run. And then one more, we talked a little bit about Franklin, a team that has been in the state championship game now each of the last 4 seasons. They're looking to make it 5. But right now, I think it could be a team like Columbus making it in 3A Division I. This team is absolutely loaded. Quarterback Adam Schobel, I believe, flipped his commitment a couple times. I think he's a TCU commit now. The linebacker, John Schobel, is outstanding. And one of the big headlines from the offseason is the Grayson Rigdon saga. So Grayson Rigdon is the 3-time reigning 6-man player of the year. He won a state championship at Strawn. He won a state championships at Benjamin the last 2 seasons. He is a super duper star. He's never lost a game in high school football. He's 3-time state champion, 4-time state championship game MVP. Yes, that is correct. 4-time state championship game MVP. He transferred in the offseason to Columbus. And now what happens when you take a guy who's on the Mount Rushmore of 6-man football and you drop him onto an 11-man contender? That is going to be absolutely fascinating. It's another reason why we think Columbus could be one of those kind of teams we haven't seen it on the big stage in a while that kind of makes their way to Arlington.
All right, let's have a little fun with this one. The rivalry reborn. Mike Elko now Texas A&M, and of course Steve Sarkisian at Texas. This is going to be a lot of fun. First time I believe since 2011, 2012, somewhere in there, since the rivalry is now renewed. I believe the game this year is at College Station, if I'm not mistaken. Could be in Austin. I haven't really looked at the schedule yet, but I love the fact that A&M goes out there and gets a 5-star, just quality home run hire. I think that was very critical for the offseason too. Great defensive guy, Mike Elko, and this is going to be just one of those things with Texas coming over in Oklahoma into the SEC, Greg. The SEC is going to be unpredictable too. Yeah,
and it's funny. First of all, we'll talk about Mike Elko. Again, a home run hire, and in a lot of ways, kind of so you've heard the theory that like when you break up with a girl, you go and you date a girl who is the exact opposite of that. That's kind of what A&M did, right? They went to Jimbo Fisher, this guy with all these skins on the wall, this guy that's national champion head coach, this guy who is known as this offensive guru, this guy who brought Jameis Winston a Heisman Trophy and led Florida State to a national championship and this, that, and the other. Well, they break up with him, and it's an expensive breakup. And then they go off and they hire basically the exact opposite of that in Mike Elko, who is, a friendly guy. He's a guy who is a defensive mastermind. He's a longtime defensive coordinator. He stays out of the headlines. Like all of these things are so different about him. And I think it might work. I think their defense is actually going to be really, really good this year. Can the offense find that next gear? Especially Connor Wegman, can he stay healthy? He's our cover boy right over my shoulder. Can he stay healthy? I think the loss of Reuben Owens really hurts. He was injured in in practice, and now is out for the year reportedly at the running back spot. That hurts. And then I want to see what the receiver core looks like, because I think the receiver core kind of got wiped out. That's one thing that I'm keeping an eye on. But the SEC now, with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma, things shift a little bit. Now remember, it's no longer SEC East, SEC West. It is instead kind of a free for all. So a lot of it comes down to what your schedule looks like. I think Texas has an opportunity. The talent is there. Quinn Ewers, they've got the quarterback. They lost their starting running back too in CJ Baxter, who was injured with a knee injury recently. They are going to be fascinating to watch. And again, all of this comes back to that game on Thanksgiving weekend in College Station. And we've been talking about it really for 2 years, that everything has to be building up to who wins that game. That is, I think it's the most important game in that series' history. Simply because I think in the new normal, who goes out there and sets the tone and says, no, this is my conference, the state runs through me. Because in a lot of ways, one of the big advantages that A&M has had recently is because as they're in the SEC, they are a team that can use that SEC hammer and say, hey, we're in the SEC, you come play for us. If you want to play SEC football, you got to come play for us. That's now gone. Because Texas is going to use that, and Oklahoma is going to use that too. You better believe. And so for A&M, I think it's absolutely imperative for them to establish 2 recruits across the state of Texas. Yes, we are still the SEC program in Texas. Yes, we are the team that you want to play for. And I think that I don't want to put it all in one game, because certainly they could go, Texas could go 0-11 and then things change. But I think that game is super important for just setting the tone of what this new normal in the SEC looks like. I think it's an enormous game, both potentially in the standings. If these teams play to their paper, it could be kind of for a college football playoff spot, and more than that, to kind of set the tone of what a Texas and A&M in the SEC culture is going to look like.
It's going to be a lot of fun there too. The SEC all one division now to the separate divisions, and of course Mike Elko making his mark now, and some top recruits there, Texas A&M, and of course Steve Sarkisian at Texas. The one, the only, one of the best of the business to do it. Greg Tepper, the managing editor of Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. Get your copy. I'm gonna do a little model here as we do on the music shows now. So guys, there's the cover. Rivalry Reborn. Go get it right now across all the stands, Barnes & Noble, wherever you find books. And on the inside cover, if you get a separate cover there too, it's got a little family business there too with our good friend, of course, Jeff Joseph and Greg Joseph there. The Katy Tigers there too. 1,500 more high schools previewed and 48 colleges, including all that. And of course, the Texans and the Cowboys and your NFL teams are in there too as well. Greg, always appreciate it too. Always love texting you too. Was a magazine out there a couple of weeks ago. It was in San Antonio. Got it at Barnes & Noble. And then, of course, making time for us here on the sportsguyspodcast.com. Have a great season. We'll be in touch, and I hope to see you, my friend, in Arlington with the P&G Indians for a 3rd straight year.
I'm looking forward to it.
You got it. Greg Tepper out there, too, for the 2024 Texas High School Football Preview Show. We're going to be on the air here in a couple of weeks on the sportsguyspodcast.com. Hampshire Finette and LCM. Yours truly, Andy McCall, on the call at that very website there, the Hampshire Finette Longhorns opening the defense of winning another district championship. Follow us all season, the home and away games there on the sportsguyspodcast.com. For all to make the show possible, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. God bless.